Welcome to Inside Out from Sutton Bank in North Yorkshire. Good evening and welcome to Inside Out. I'm Toby Foster. Now behind me lies the Vale of York, and to the east we've got the Vale of Pickering. But soon this beautiful countryside could be littered with fracking wells to extract the shale gas that lies beneath. We investigate claims that unregulated fracking could lead to an environmental disaster. Also tonight, we join the investigators trying to track down the energy thieves.
The meter has definitely been interfered with because it has a fake seal in the top.
An oil industry expert has warned Inside Out that unregulated fracking by energy companies could lead to an environmental disaster. Now, with hundreds of exploration licences already granted here in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire and many more in the pipeline, Danni Hewson looks at this controversial method of extracting shale gas.
Let's go to war for water.
On the battleground, where environmentalists and big business square up, this is the front line.
Keep it walking.
Shale is important for our country.
I can't see a huge shale gas industry developing. Yorkshire is not Texas.
As energy companies prepare to drill across Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, who'll be making sure it's safe?
Nothing would go ahead if there were environmental dangers. I think people can be reassured by that.
You cannot put any price on your children's health. It doesn't matter what the money is. Unless they're going to do it right, we can't have it. It's too dangerous.
All the people have to ask themselves, if the government is having to bribe communities to accept this, something is very wrong.
So is the government pushing ahead with fracking at any cost? How can we be sure our water won't be polluted and our health affected? And will the mistakes made in the USA be repeated over here? Companies are lining up to drill through the rock thousands of feet below us so that they can sell the gas that's been trapped there for millions of years. From here in Scarborough on the Yorkshire coast, across the country to here in Blackpool, a thick band of shale stretches right across England, thousands of feet beneath us. It's known as the Bowland Shale. The 200 licences granted to explore for shale gas in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire so far are seen here in red. The blue area indicates how far that might extend. And this is what the fuss is all about. A geological quirk means this shale at Mamtor in the Peak District is on the surface rather than deep underground. But exposed to the air, this shale no longer contains gas. The only way of extracting that is by fracking or hydraulic fracturing. Banned in some countries, including France, Germany and certain states of the US, fracking involves pumping millions of litres of high-pressure water and chemicals deep underground and extracting the gas from the well.
Test drilling for shale gas in Lancashire has been suspended after a small earthquake on the Foul coast.
But the first time a high-pressure fracking procedure was carried out in the UK, it didn't end well.
The earthquake triggered by the UK's first foray into fracking effectively stopped the industry in its tracks. But that is all changing.
For 2 decades, Mike Hill has worked on oil and gas rigs all over the world. He's fracked for gas in Africa, and he was on the drilling rig when it caused the earthquake in Blackpool, just miles from his home. His subsequent recommendation for a seismic activity warning system has been adopted by the government. But he says a further 11 safety recommendations he made have been ignored, despite 3 years of lobbying.
We're in a situation in the UK where we're going to have unregulated fracking. And not only unregulated, but also not inspected or monitored. I want fracking done right, and I want it regulated, and I want it monitored. If you're not going to do that, you shouldn't be doing it at all.
The fracking industry in the United States was exempted from water and air pollution laws in some states. More than a decade after the industry took off in North America, there have been a raft of independent studies into the health implications of living near shale gas sites. In a recent report, independent researchers revealed that the health of newborn babies within 2 miles of a fracking site can be severely compromised. Others directly link fracking chemicals with birth defects, as well as neurological and respiratory problems. The film Gasland, which shows igniting tap water, has been dismissed by some as activist propaganda. But independent research by Duke University did find dangerous and combustible levels of methane in drinking water near fracking sites. This directly contradicts the industry's own research. In the UK, there are no specific regulations designed for the shale gas industry. Current ones are 25 years old and were designed for the offshore industry.
There's a number of dangers really from fracking. In terms of water contamination, when you frack a well and you pump millions of gallons of chemicals and water down the well at high pressure, the bulk of that fluid goes into the shale formation. Fracking fluid, I shouldn't call it water because it contains lead at 1,500 times the safe level of drinking water. It contains arsenic, cadmium, radioactive material, and all of these things, even if you had nothing at the surface. This is what it's picking up from the shales. That fracking fluid flows back, and it flows back, you hope, up the centre of the well. However, you've drilled right through all your sealing and capping rocks to get down to the shales at, say, around 10,000 feet. You've then linked those shales and all the potential toxic fracking fluid directly to your aquifer and your groundwater at the surface. The only thing protecting that aquifer from contamination is the cement around the borehole and around the casing strings, the metal tubes that you've put down the centre.
The Health and Safety Executive is in charge of making sure these wells don't leak, but they don't in fact inspect them in person. They'll rely on reports from expert examiners who are often employed by the gas companies themselves. But Energy Minister Michael Fallon says the regulatory regime is robust.
It says it doesn't have the resources to go in and check each individual well. Said that would be impossible for them.
It's not possible for a health and safety inspector to stand in the corner of every single factory of this country or in every single chemical plant. The onus of responsibility rightly has to be placed on the owner and operator of that site in the first instance, because they must take the legal responsibility for compliance. But I assure you that the Health and Safety Executive have all the resources they need to come in and check it's being done properly. And I'm satisfied the regulatory structure we've got at the moment is sufficient. We've added new safeguards about seismic activity, and I think we've got the balance right, protecting the environment and the local community and those who are doing the work, but also ensuring that the burden of regulation is not so oppressive that it actually halts any kind of exploration, which of course some people who are opposed to shale gas would want to do.
The other main regulatory body is the Environment Agency. It's in charge of ensuring the toxic water that flows back is disposed of safely. Having lost 1,500 jobs, there are doubts it has the expertise or manpower to regulate effectively. Questions remain about how millions of litres of water with radioactive contamination will be dealt with. The EA is also supposed to monitor abandoned wells.
They are totally clueless when it comes to what happens to a well after it's been abandoned. All the equipment and instrumentation and software and hardware that is now used to drill wells and to monitor them, the EA don't have this equipment, and they don't even understand that this equipment exists and how it can be used. So they're not monitoring these wells. They're just being left.
The key environmental work they do in protecting the environment, I can assure you that the procedures we're establishing under the regulatory framework mean that they will have to be absolutely satisfied that there is no risk of contamination of the water supply, and that any waste involved has to be properly disposed of. These are legally binding requirements.
This is Kirby Misperton near Pickering, where exploratory drilling has been carried out down to the Bowland Shale. Screened by those trees just behind me is the site of a test drilling carried out by Viking Gas last October. Officially, the company says it has no interest in shale gas, but its own planning application appears to contradict that, as it specifically targets the Bowland Shale. Viking Gas wouldn't give an interview, but did eventually concede it is now analysing shale samples with a view to further drilling. A mile away, Lendale's farm produces beef cattle. It's been run by the same family for
for 3 generations.
If they could actually prove 100% that it was safe, yes, I would approve of it. Our animals in the summer drink from the river, and also if it gets into the watercourses, it could affect drinking water. You know, this is why farmers have to adhere to stringent rules so we don't affect the watercourses, and I think the fracking companies should do the same. You would hope the council would be on board and would be monitoring it with the Environment Agency, but whether that's going to happen, we don't know.
No one from North Yorkshire County Council would give us an interview, but the council leader told Inside Out they had no official position on fracking and that each application would be considered on its merits.
Today we're announcing that the local council should keep 100% of the business rates.
Some have dismissed as bribery the government's new incentives for councils. In York, there are currently 3 licence blocks owned by Dart Energy who've indicated their intention to apply for exploratory drilling permits.
We don't know about what effect that has to seismic activity in what is an historic city with heritage buildings. We don't know enough about what that does to water supply, and yet the evidence of saying that gas prices will go down and there'll be this energy panacea just doesn't seem to be there. I take with a pinch of salt the idea that we can keep business rates. I am writing to the Prime Minister to say what is the difference between fracking and the forms of renewable energy like wind and solar, and can we keep the business rates from them? I have seen a number of councils across the region beginning to pass motions through full council saying they're against fracking, and I can understand that, but at the same time their own planning departments are finding it difficult to find ways of upholding that policy. The legal framework from government just doesn't seem to be there.
The pad's built, the well's drilled, the equipment's on, the operator's ready to frack. It would be a very brave council that then says, no, you've gone that far, now you stop, we're not letting you go any further. Because you can be sure that operator immediately appeals to the Secretary of State, and you can be sure that decision is immediately overturned.
The prospect of lower gas bills has been dismissed by some ministers, and even by the government's key advisor, Lord Brown, also chairman of fracking company Quadrilla.
It could bring 74,000 jobs, over £3 billion of investment, give us...
And there's scepticism too about how many jobs would be created by a shale gas industry in the UK. Mike Hill says that once the wells are up and running, much of the work is automated.
You would need a maximum of 50 guys to work 3,000 plus wells. So you're looking long term at a small number of jobs.
So Mamtor is this hill here, and you can see this cliff.
The British Geological Survey was asked by the government to estimate the extent of the Bowland Shale and calculated a figure of 1,300 trillion cubic metres. But despite that, they doubt whether the industry is viable in this country.
We shouldn't be distracted by this enormous figure. We might be lucky to get 1% out. We might get 0%. We have to be realistic about this. It's quite hard to imagine, you know, a big shale gas industry in a country so densely populated, and also full of people who love their landscape and, you know, who value it.
Across the Pennines, the iGas compound at Barton Moss near Salford is effectively besieged by the protesters camped outside. This convoy of lorries is just a few hundred yards from the exploratory drill site, but that short distance will take over an hour.
Keep it walking.
As long as they keep moving, this obstruction is not illegal. And for the protesters, it's the ideal way of making even the search for gas as difficult as possible.
They waste 8 million odd gallons of water per well, 3,000 wells, that's a lot of water.
The lorries pass what has become a permanent protest camp, attracting campaigners from all over the country. They've been buoyed by the success of a similar protest at Bolcombe in Sussex, which stopped fracking operations. They see that battle as a template for stopping a whole industry in its tracks.
It's not just the camps. It's all the local people in Bolcombe. The local residents did a huge, you know, amazing job. They were just challenging the environmental agency permits. They were, you know, just challenging the whole process.
Inside the compound, there's little activity today, despite the protests outside.
Looking around, I mean, it's like an army camp in enemy territory. Can it ever be worth it?
This is the first time we've ever had to resort to putting up some security around it of this sort of order of magnitude, and that's been because of some of the activities of people who have a legitimate right to protest to the idea of fracking.
But at the moment, iGas isn't even fracking on this site. It can only do so after a further planning application.
We believe that it is worth pursuing this because it's got an enormous benefit for not just the country as a whole in terms of energy security, but for the region in terms of jobs, training, employment and everything that goes with it.
People are worried that their water is going to be contaminated. Should they be worried?
There has been evidence of some contamination, but that's been caused because the well has not been constructed properly. And there is absolutely no evidence that it has been caused by fracking per se. In terms of the water specifically, we do our own baseline monitoring of that, pre-arriving on site, during and post.
Many believe independent testing is the only way to hold energy companies to account over water contamination. To that end, the British Geological Survey is conducting its own tests on water supplies across the country in advance of any shale gas extraction. These tests on the North York moors will establish methane levels before any fracking is carried out.
I've no issue with fracking going ahead, but not going ahead unregulated. It has to be controlled, it has to be monitored, it has to be inspected. Otherwise, the risks to the public and the environment are very severe. It's an absurd situation to be in. It's a situation where the industry is more pro-regulation than the government. The industry is less pro-fracking than the government. It's a completely weird and absurd situation to be in. But that's the situation we're presently in. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous for the public in Yorkshire and indeed across the UK. Because if we get fracking by stealth, we also don't get any regulations either.
People get concerned about, well, should we be burning gas and what about renewables? The reality is we need energy and we need various types of energy, and gas is much cleaner than coal, and gas is a way of, as we continue to grow the renewable side of things, it can be part of the overall energy mix.
The government wants the fracking industry to succeed in this country. Those who oppose it have a massive fight on their hands to stop it.
Now, if you've got any views on fracking or know about a story that we should be covering, please contact us on Facebook or Twitter. Now, whilst fracking is being touted as a solution to sky-high energy prices, in the meantime, most of us are just trying to find clever ways to keep our bills down. Some, however, are taking matters into their own hands and stealing gas and electricity. Mark Jordan has been finding out more.
Energy prices are making headlines as our bills hit an all-time high. Honest households pay up, but £30 a year of our bill is paying for stolen power.
The meter has definitely been interfered with because it has a fake seal in the top.
This is the story of the power thieves and the people who track them down. The British Gas Training Academy in Leicester. Here, engineers learn how to spot tampering of gas and electric supply. It's never been more needed.
Difficult economic climate equals more people feeling that this is the only way that they can get their energy. I feel the trend is upwards. This is a huge problem. We believe that perhaps £500 million worth of gas and electricity are stolen across the industry a year. In terms of what that means for a customer, potentially £30 a year on their bills, and that's a lot of money for our customers, and it's money that they shouldn't have to pay.
For the next few days, I'm riding along with Piers and Malcolm, power theft investigators.
The most bizarre case that I think I've dealt with is probably a nursing home, and when we caught him, it cost him £25,000.
But this morning's call is for much smaller fry.
Well, the first three that we've got are domestic.
A routine meter reading on an East London estate has discovered a single mother of three tampering with her gas meter.
There was what appears to be a cooker hose at the time that actually replaced that gas meter.
Just need to inspect the gas meter, please.
Even with gas central heating, they only paid £15 last year.
How many people live in the property?
My mum,
Two sisters and myself.
The meter's back but hasn't been installed correctly. Because the mother has children, she's considered vulnerable and can't be cut off.
Potentially this one will go to the police. And we try to trace back who's doing this. We do find trends of where people are going around estates and tampering with the same meters in the same way. These people will charge a range. We've heard from £10 up to £500 a time. They can do 10 to 15 a day. They're not putting themselves at risk. If something happened there, it's all the adjoining properties and everyone in there who's going to be affected by a potential explosion.
This was the scene that people on Dundas Road woke up to this morning.
Whatever the cause, gas explosions can be deadly.
A suspected gas explosion inside a terraced house.
In Sheffield last year, this entire house was blown apart. Miraculously, no one died, but it's a chilling reminder of the dangers of gas. The damage of that explosion was so great that authorities were never able to pinpoint the exact cause. Emergency services were worried about other dangers, so they decided to conduct a test.
The police were on site and the networks were on site, and they asked us whether or not we felt it was right to have a look at some of the other supplies in the street. And yes, from looking at about 20 houses in a single terrace street, sure enough we found 5 gas thefts and 2 electricity thefts. That's a great example of what the scale of the issue is.
Little now shocks Mark. He's seen all sorts of dangerous ways of stealing power.
This is one that really impacts on safety. A bicycle in a tube, and they've used it to bridge the gas meter, so instead of the gas meter being here, this tube would literally just be across here like that.
Hello? We'll come here to inspect the electricity meter, OK? OK.
I've got a bypass on the electric meter.
OK.
This flat's total bill of just £5 for last year led them to find this dangerous bypass.
But can you tell me which is the problem of this?
Malcolm prepares evidence for prosecution and the bill for years of stolen electricity.
It would actually back billed since 2008, from when the account started.
Wow, it's going to be a big bill.
It will be, yeah.
Hard up and hard times may drive some, but we're now in a very rich part of Essex. Homes here often sell for over £1 million. But the team have a tip-off about an 8-bed mansion with £300,000 worth of cars on the forecourt. But the house is suspiciously energy efficient.
Can I come in and just have a look to see what you've got? Yeah. OK, thank you. Where's the light switch for this room here?
Within minutes of the team's arrival, the power to most of the house mysteriously goes off.
My suspicion is that all the back of that house and that garage is off an unmetered supply, which they've now switched off.
But where to look for the illegal supply?
I'm just looking to see if any of it's been taken up recently.
The owners insist the only meters are the ones outside. But an hour and a half into the search, Piers finds another supply.
Oh no, I can see the pipe. Ah! Another electricity meter.
Moments later...
OK. There we have another gas meter. All the power, be it gas or electricity, used through these 2 meters is not being billed, it appears. So they're getting it for free. For now.
But very soon it's a mansion without power. The illegal supply is cut off. It won't be restored until an estimated £6,000 of stolen energy is paid for.
These people can quite obviously afford to pay for all their energy, and yet they're not.
Theft is being made all the easier by the internet.
There you go. It's going slow now.
Video guides on stealing energy. A new local scam can go global in days. It is a cat-and-mouse game. Close one scam and another quickly opens. The latest comes from Chinese community newspapers. They openly advertise telephone numbers for someone to come round and meddle with your meter.
Take control of your meters with this super money-saving device.
Especially suitable for takeaways, restaurants, and households.
That Chinese scam has now spread across Britain.
We're from British Gas. Come to inspect the gas meter, if we can.
Piers and Malcolm think they found it in this fish and chip shop.
Just put something on gas that's using gas. That's good, yeah. Cool.
Doesn't seem to be moving. We're going to take that meter and leave you off supply, so cut off the gas.
Piers soon unravels the crude scam from China that's being uncovered in restaurants across Britain.
Right, OK, we've removed that. I'm now going to remove the index mechanism.
He then exposes the cogs that drive the meter mechanism. It's the moment of truth.
I don't know if you can see that. It's got teeth that have been taken off.
Cut off half the teeth and you halve the bill. This one has just a single tooth left.
So only a fraction of the gas has been recorded on that index. And you still don't know anything about it. You don't know when that could have happened or who could have done it.
Meanwhile, Malcolm produces an estimated bill. It's £1,782.10 for the past 4 months.
Can you pay that now? Otherwise, I've got to tell the engineers to make sure that supply is capped off and I can let them go, or we'll walk away with the meter.
It sounds tough, but they can only charge for the few months he's been with British Gas. This former Merseyside detective warns that thieves, like good consumers, keep changing supplier.
If you can just change supplier very easily, as it is now, if you get caught subtracting electricity from one company, you can leave and then go to another one. This is a problem. If you say to them, right, there's £1 million of electricity being abstracted from your company, their profits and their income will be exactly the same, because that £1 million loss will be spread over all the honest bill-paying customers, so they've lost nothing.
Back at the chip shop, the owner's credit card means this is one bill we won't be picking up. Immunity from prosecution not included. There is one area of power theft where police, not power companies, take the lead.
Step away from the door.
Nationwide, police uncover over 20 cannabis farms a day, most stealing their electricity. Essex police raid up to 6 a week. It's thought a third of the electricity stolen in Britain goes on cannabis farms. So they follow the wires all around the house and they think that this electricity is being stolen from the neighbours.
You can see there's a power cable. That's apparent that that's coming from next door, so they've spurred the power from next door.
Police are now under orders to destroy everything that makes growing cannabis possible. Power theft, whether on cannabis farms or the chip shop, it's booming, and unless detected, we get the bill.
The total invoice amount is £7,702.88.
Catching the thieves is costly. Few will ever be geeky enough to ask for a discount.
We don't offer discount.
Sin does too much.
OK. Do you want to get the electrician in?
The lights may go out, but the bill's still on us.
Cut the electricity off. OK.
Well, that's all for tonight here at Sutton Bank. Make sure you join us next week, when we'll be investigating claims of abuse at a youth detention centre, looking at the effects of so-called legal highs and finding out what happened to the Bradford car company that was once a world beater.